right. Welcome back, listeners. I am here with Tim Schumer of Next Level Human Capital. Now, Tim is absolutely amazing at taking things that are HR and flipping them completely on their head and really looking at things with a whole new perspective. So, Tim, welcome back again for another podcast. You have so much great information to share. So, we are so excited to have you today. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here again. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, Dina.
Yes, yes, I so appreciate that. I want to talk and dive into today something that a lot of business owners really spend a lot of time on, and it's goal setting. But you have taken goal setting because it's become kind of like this monotonous thing and kind of boring in the SMART goal world, right?
That's right.
And you have taken it and you have completely flipped it on its head, and you now have this way of looking at goals in a whole new way that measures impact, right? So tell us a little bit about your whole goals and how you measure that.
It's interesting how you say that is a whole new way is whole goals. And you're right. SMART goals, they have their place. They're a great function. They've been around. It's been around for, decades and used as a guidance for management to put out goals. And I feel like over the years, either something changed in how we develop people or maybe just the natural culture of the work world. The goal writing from it has not gotten better necessarily. And a lot of managers that I've worked with over the years have just had a difficult time sometimes in thinking, how do I come up with a SMART goal for even just like, first line positions or things like that? And not every position equally has the same kind of goals, like a director versus like a accounts payable clerk. Those are going to be very different types of goals. And so one of the things I did when I was working in a manufacturing plant, I was helping a manager write some goals. And he had just a hard time with the statement of SMART goals, right? So specific. He's like, okay, what specifically do I write? And I'm like, oh, that's a good question. And so in doing that, I kind of accidentally stumbled across this. And I created this thing called whole goals. Because what I did was I switched it from a statement to a question. And that's what whole goals is. It's taking SMART goals and basically turning it into a question. There's not a lot of reinvention here, just kind of a modification of the wheel, if you will. And so whole goals is WHOLE, right? What will I do? How will I know? Organizational goal, learning and evaluating, right? So we want to ask the question, what will I do? What will I do to contribute to the organization or the business? How will I know I was successful in my contribution, right? There's your measurement piece. How are my goals linked to the organizational goal? Because we want to be able to tie what you're doing is actually contributing to the business. And learning, what are you going to learn or what are you going to develop while doing this goal? Personal development should naturally occur in any goal that you do. And then, of course, evaluate. You want to evaluate the progress, either monthly or quarterly. You could do it more frequently if you wanted to, but I wouldn't recommend going any higher per quarter. But that was the basic of what we came out. When I started giving that to some of the managers, they found it so much easier just to write goals by thinking of it more in terms of a question. And that's pretty much what Whole Goals has been able to do to help manage.
Absolutely. And I do find that so profound as somebody who's neurolinguistic trained. The power of asking a question really gets your brain thinking versus a statement shuts it down in
Yes.
a lot of cases. And so I love that you've put that flip on it and it's really changed the whole dynamic and impact of how you extract that information for business owners. Have you found that there's maybe been like a case study where maybe for years they may have missed something, but then in just asking a few of those questions, everything changed for them?
I don't know if there's an actual case study in the scheme of things where I work. I measure my success in attaboys and pats on the back, right? So, managers they were less stressed at goal writing time. They liked that they had options. And to be fair, I worked for an organization that was pretty flexible. They wanted the goals. They didn't care if you wrote it out in the smart format necessarily or anything. They wanted the goals. And that was holy goals kind of creates more of a line item. So in smart goals, a lot of people where it became a problem is that you're creating they focus on creating a paragraph for some. So they're taking smart, they're like, okay, specific goal. Okay, what's the M? How am I measuring it? And they just created in a paragraph. And whole goals, when I designed it as like a functional chart to use, it was based on the line. Like it's WHOLE. You fill in next to the W what you're going to do. And then you fill in the how. How will you know you're successful? What's your measure? How am I going to know that we were good? And, how did I know? I knew because managers were doing better with goal writing, and even the employees were better off with it because they too got to view it in the form of a question and really think about, how am I going to know I'm successful? What am I doing for the business? And how are my goals linked and correlated to the organization's overall goals? Because if you can get an employee tying what they're doing to the overall goals, well, that's the dream of every company. It doesn't make sense to have goals. And I see this a lot in organizations where somebody has a goal that really has nothing to do with the overall there. And even if it did, the employee could never tell you how it correlates. And I found that to be the maximum performance measurement is, can the employee honestly correlate what they're doing to the overall mission of the company? Whether it's an annual mission or regular thing, like you should be able to say what you're doing to contribute to the organization's success. And it wouldn't matter if you're an accounts payable clerk or the director of HR, you should be able to say, accounts payable, that's an easy thing. How are you contributing to the organization? I'm paying the bills so we keep the lights on. And that correlates to the mission by simply making sure that everybody else can do the same. So it doesn't matter how you correlate as long as you have like a conscious knowing of what you're doing and why. Because if you don't know why you're doing it, well, you really shouldn't be doing it.
100%. And that love that you brought this up because a lot of times we have an issue with like talent and finding good, high quality workers, right? In business. Like this is a thing. There's a shortage of people who want to work, right? So,
Right.
and yet people need jobs. So there it's not that, people aren't unemployed. There's unemployed people out there, right? But
Mhm.
there's something about finding talent in a way that helps to front load that skill or have a skill that you're really looking for and really looking at how they're going to elevate your business, right? And so sometimes those times where we have like a talent review or even finding talent, we have to have difficult conversations. Instead of just doing these box checking exercises, we have to have deep, meaningful conversations. So tell me, like, how, because I know you have some unorthodox ways of getting in there and finding that talent and then also extracting, hey, Sally has a problem here, but not saying it that way. You're like, hey, here's why you got passed up for the promotion, or, here's why we've overlooked you. Are you willing to change? Are you willing to step up? So tell me a little bit about like your method to all that. Cause I know it's a tough conversation sometimes.
They are. And I found over the years the tough conversations become a little simpler for me when you're just honest, right? A little bit of just honesty and a way to talk with people with the kind of care that you would reserve for a close personal friend. Now, that doesn't mean your workers should be your friend, but that doesn't mean you can't give a little bit of empathy there in some of the areas. I think we talked about this maybe on the last podcast. We had an employee that, was passed up, and he was passed up because they didn't trust him and they didn't like him. And they wanted me to go back and give him a line full of bull. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. That doesn't help him or us for that matter. If we're going to keep him, especially, we can't just tell him a lie and then expect him to get better. I mean, so, a lot of this just comes with, understanding who you're talking to. Know the employee. Some employees are more volatile than others, and that's just natural hardwiring that tends to come with. And kind of understand, like, okay, what's the best way to approach this person? A really good HR person will know how to. They will know these people in a way that tells them, okay, here's how I'm going to approach this. And that's what and that was what I could be relied on too. In some of the organizations I work to, is that, okay, I know how I'm going to approach this, right? And so the approach usually just, be honest, be polite, and don't be surprised when they maybe react a certain way. But again, if you're just polite and honest about it and come to the table with ideas, that's a big key with how you're going to help them, then it doesn't become so defensive. And now it's a team action, right? We're in this together. We're going to run together, right? There's comes back into that military mindset of mine. It's like, yeah, you might have screwed up, but we're in this together. And the only way we survive is if I get you better. Right. And so that's kind of the way it should be in just about any company, any business. There are certainly going to be difficult people you deal with that just are constantly me against the machine. And there's nothing you can do about that. That's just who that person is. And when you do figure that out, it's probably time to part ways. But most people are reasonable. And if you can just talk with them in a way that shows a little bit of respect and maintains their dignity intact, but with the importance of expressing the message that you came there to express, which is not doing very well in this area. Okay. And here's my thought as to why, and here's my thought on a solution. What are your thoughts on that? That actually kind of comes back into feedback conversation that where I use with Soro. And I learned this years ago from a very brilliant trainer. I actually still friends with him and talk with him this day. And Soro is just kind of a way to have a conversation in a non-defensive way, right? So it's just, hey, here, I'll say it really fast. I always use it as a fun little story type of thing where, you want to be able to express everything kind of quickly. So here's how it's not. You're going to go up to it. So Dina, I need to have a conversation with you.
Okay.
I've noticed that you have a booger hanging out of your nose. When you have a booger hanging out of your nose, your coworkers see you as less professional than them. I feel like if you remove the booger from your nose, that they will begin to see you as more professional and integrate you more into the team. What are your thoughts on that?
I think I'd like to move the booger. Yeah.
So that's just a fun way I like to tell the story, but that's exactly what I just said. It was unemotional. I was very clear what was the problem was. I expressed how it's affecting the team. I gave you a solution, and I even gave you an opportunity to tell me your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
So that is the best way to have a good conversation with somebody, to give them feedback in a non-defensive way and bring them into the conversation. Now, if you would have chosen to say, you know what, this is my booger and it's staying right here in my nose, well, now we got to change the focus of the conversation a little bit. Well, now I got questions about your hygiene and think so. I mean, that can happen. And most people ask, well, Tim, what do you do when somebody just starts to get really, really defensive? Well, when it becomes a very defensive, at the end of the day, you're the manager, you're the supervisor. You started the conversation, you can absolutely end it. And if you think you're going to, for 1 second, respond to a negative situation with your own negativity, I caution you against that. There's nothing but a lawsuit waiting for you. That's your permission to end the conversation, dismiss your employee, and regroup. Because you do not want to respond to emotion with more emotion. It will just get out of hand quickly. And I've seen that happen. It's not a pretty picture.
And I feel like your method really helps to put the power back in their hands.
Yes.
You're giving them, "Here, this is the problem and here's the solution. Would you
Mhm.
like the solution or would you like to come up with another?" And
Exactly.
and so it's a win-win. So I love your take on that. I wanted to ask you because speaking about like employees and sometimes not so great employees slip through the cracks, right? And then they get in there and then you realize like this one's a cancer for the whole team, you know? And so there are some interview hacks that you have where you kind of look for those competent jerks or the likable slacker, in the interview process, right? And so what are some of your, like, killer questions that kinda help to expose those true colors in 60 seconds or less?
Well, and to be honest, in interviews, I usually start out with I have usually like a list of 6 questions, and they're designed to if in those 6 questions we haven't started a conversation, then that's actually part of the problem. But in general, I like to assess candidates so I have a little bit idea of their personality and where they're at. And it allows me to direct more behavioral style questions. But some of the questions I really like is usually have to do around explaining what they've done. I like when because that should be demonstrating a certain amount of passion. And without the passion, I usually kind of get lost there a little bit with them. Everybody looks for something different in interviews for their own reasons. And usually those reasons have to do with some kind of trauma in the workplace where they had an employee that messed up something really bad and exhibited this personality. And then all of a sudden they're sitting there interviewing for the replacement. And they've got all these preconceived notions that they're asking questions around, which I get. But at the same point, you don't want to take away from the fact that you're looking at a totally different person that has nothing to do with the person you might have just fired or not. Looking for the passion in what they do, or at least the commitment. And I find that by people who come in with it's actually not even a question, it's actually a preference. I like when people bring in samples of their artwork, samples of their work, whatever they've done. Like, for example, I created whole goals. We were just talking about a little bit ago. That's something I'd bring into an interview so I could give them a visual and an explanation. And it demonstrates something I've done. It shows the methodology behind it. It gives you a visual. So now you see what it looks like. And it's something that I'm excited about. And you capture that in the interview. If you can find out from somebody their commitment into your organization and what you're doing, usually falls in line with passion that they have. And it should relate to the job you're hiring them. Other questions I like to ask really focus around just where they're going next. I don't ask it in the term of like, hey, what's your 5 year plan? No, but especially like, and I saw that you're seeing it, we'll go to that later. But I do like when I can ask them certain questions that revolve around the passion of what they're doing and why they want to do it. That's the biggest thing I look for in people that would work for me and my organization. You got to love this. And it's got to be about, producing success for your client. And that's what I do. And that's what I want people working with me doing under any scenario or circumstance. I don't want to hear about your desires for working from home or anything. I want to hear that I'll be where the client needs me to be. That's exactly our business model here at Next Level Human Capital is that where you need us, coach, that's where we're going. It might include working from home. It might include being in my office. And it might be including on your office. So I really look for that a lot is trying to see, we've had so much come up over the last years of work from home and mental health wellness and work-life balance and all these other things. And it's starting to frustrate, I think, some of the managers when they interview, because here's the questions that we get. We used to hear, at least when people were honest, we used to hear, when does my benefits start? How often do I get raises? People would ask those kind of questions. What kind of money are we talking? Those kind of things. I would be refreshed to have those questions because nowadays, do I have to come to the office all the time? Like, well, how else are you supposed to work? How much vacation time do I get? And it really has turned into a bit of what's in it for me as opposed to what am I going to do for you? Any question you can come up with that can circle you around that, you'll do better to find better candidates. But in either event, I would always recommend doing a little bit of an assessment on them just because it's good to have cognitive and personalities, not to disqualify, but to understand better and ask the right question. And that's actually something that we do here. Right. I have an assessment platform that we use that actually provides behavioral style questions based on the results of your assessment so that you can know them.
That's amazing. And I'm sure that some of the businesses that you have, conversed with are seeing some workforce trends that we didn't have, 5 years ago.
Yes, and COVID changed everybody's thing, and because they shut the world down, yeah, everybody got to work from home. They got a taste, and they said they were more productive, but the businesses didn't really see it the same way. And that's because, and I understand, I worked from home during that time too, our company, but at the same time, nothing really changed that much. I didn't go into the office at all at that time, but it was a global company. We were mobile anyway. I was working from Mexico sometimes, I was in the US working from home. Like nothing really changed because in a global environment, everybody's remote. So it wasn't a huge, huge change for us, but the change was we took everybody that way. It wasn't just the leaders in an organization that were working that way, it was everybody. It created this lasting impression that, oh yeah, we could do this. But the employees are often selfish for themselves, and rightfully so. And it's not, they're thinking of it, well, I am productive. I'm like, yes, but the team is not as engaged with itself. And you don't know the team as well. Before COVID, I knew all kinds of things about people. It was easy to kick off work a few minutes early on a Friday and go do a happy hour, but nobody was doing that except for an HR generalist that I had working for me at the time. She was awesome, one of the best that I ever brought up in the business. And she created online happy hours. She even sent everybody a gift with like a koozie cup and a bottle opener and stuff with like the Critters logo. Yeah. And then invited everybody to a Zoom with their whatever beverage, only 4:30, and conducted like a little happy hour online. Now, if you get companies that do stuff like that, that does help a little bit, but you never take away from the fact that if you're not in the office at all or remote most of the time, like 90% of the time, your team dynamics have probably suffered. And that's because it's difficult to create relationships when you're just not in person. Like there's only so much zooming you can do. And actually, one of the frustrating things I had is like, okay, we're working from home. We have Zoom and work and Teams, all that stuff, cameras. Then we got to a point where people are like, well, I don't think I should have to turn on my camera. And I'm like, so you give a mouse a cookie and they want a glass of milk, right? And it just keeps going down. So when I see their CEOs out there, I know Amazon and Chase Bank are like the biggest ones in the news right now because they kind of taken a little bit of a hostile look towards it, they're not wrong in what they're doing. They're a little wrong in how they're presenting themselves with it, in my opinion, but they're not wrong in what they're trying to do. Some of the leaders look at it as, well, if my line workers have to be in, why shouldn't my other workers? I don't agree with that reasoning. It is reasoning, but we shouldn't do something just because somebody else is required to do it. That's called job required. But if you're bringing people back to the office, that's probably the best thing. But I have encouraged to some clients, like kind of a hybrid model of some kind on certain workers. It kind of depends on the business, but you should probably be ready for continuity. Thing is, we got to understand our government shut down the world in a couple of weeks over a virus. They figured out that we would allow them to do that, and it will happen again now. So it's just a matter of time when and what's going to cause it. But you can count on that there will be some other thing that happens in our lifetime where they're going to shut down the workplace, and you should definitely take serious your business continuity plans, your people continuity. This goes back into another thing that we've created here at Next Level, which is a workforce mobility planning. What is the mobility of your workforce? And we did this by putting in 4 different categories of labeling them from no mobility over to maximum mobility. And this is basically a scale. It's a simple scale that lets you know, like, hey, these workers, their job exists because we have a building. So they have no choice. They can only work inside this building. So if the building's closed, what do we do with them? What happens next, right? Whether you put them on layoff, whether you decide to pay them fixed hours till you figure out what's going on, that'll be company level decision, but at least you know where you stand. You should know who those employees are and how many of them you have. And then you move up, and then you have kind of a conditional mobility where it's like, yeah, I can be pretty much working from home, but at minimum, I need to hit the office at least once or twice a week because I need access to lab equipment or special software or whatever that is at the company. But other than that, I can work from home. And then I think my third level was meant to be mostly mobile for like leader level, which is they could be mobile for indefinitely, but they mostly travel or just have to be able to be ready to come in to maybe take a leader shift at the company, or they just need to be on site for leadership presence and things like that. So they could kind of come and go as they need to. And then you have like, permanent work from home jobs that there's no requirement to be in the office to be productively completed, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't be in the office. But if you're thinking of it from a mobility standpoint, from a continuity, these are jobs that can be conducted at home 100% with minimum or no support at all from the office. And that is definitely the next level of thinking in organizations, I think, is that we should not forget that it was only 5 years ago when we shut down the world, and it is absolutely on the table to happen again. So continuity is something you should definitely keep in mind.
Yeah, I love that you laid all that out because I think if there's like a CEO that's really debating like which way do I go? Do I allow this or do I not allow this? I love that you have this data point where you can kind of show, hey, if you're in this situation, here's what we do. This is going to be the best case scenario if you're structured like this, and so if that's something, listeners, if that's something that you would like to see from Tim, he has it available for you. So
Absolutely.
out, and we'll put the link below here on this podcast. And he has such amazing tools. I highly, highly suggest reaching out to Tim. He'll have a conversation with you, a discovery call that allows you to pick his brain. He's full of amazing pearls of wisdom and just really thinks so out of the box when it comes to HR and all the components of working and relationships and workforce. And I just can't say enough about how amazing it is to work with him. So reach out, have that conversation, get your business functioning top level. You want that in your resources. So you're going to want him.
Well, thank you, Gina. I appreciate that so much. They're such a fan, and I appreciate you so much. Coming on your show is great. One thing I will add too, if you do decide you're starting to bring your team back into the office, it is actually important. You probably see this on LinkedIn all the time, or Facebook, or whatever other social network, TikTok or whatever. And they will have these like little memes that discussions out there of, coming back to the office full time. It's actually very important that you give a meaningful work. HR cannot be one of the memes out there of having a pizza party. That isn't why you're bringing people back to the office. Although it's a nice gesture, it is actually important that if you're one of those companies that hasn't come back or made the jump to fully coming back to the office yet, but you're planning on it, make sure you think of the meaningful ways to reconnect and interact, create interaction for the team. Meaningful stuff, not just, okay, we're going to start doing our meetings in person. Have an activity that is business related to the organization, team building stuff or a project, bring them in to start talking and drawing out project ideas in the office and working together as a team physically. Because where you're going to lose support from your employees is if you just bring them back and it's just business as usual. They're doing everything they were doing at home and everybody's still ignoring them here. Don't do that. That'll definitely make it worse. So
Yeah. So, how, if somebody would like to have a conversation with you, what is the best way to get a hold of you, Tim?
best way is to go to my website and make an appointment there or contact me through there. You can email me at client.services at nextlevelhumancapital.com. And again, my website is a plethora of information. Some of the stuff we talked about here is absolutely free on the website. But of course, they're just simple resources. And if you feel like you don't need to talk to me about it, you got your own map, right? But if you need a compass and you need some guidance, that's what I'm here for. Give me a call. I'm happy to walk you through or, take your team through an exercise to, figure out the best solution for you. Because not all businesses are created equal, as much as we'd like them to be. They have different nuances and, different restrictions and constraints. And we figure all that out, take it into account.
I love that. Yep. Bounce great ideas off you and just move.
So like me, if you just want to bounce an idea, hey, I got an idea. I just want to know. And hey, yeah, you're not sure where to begin, call Tim, right? And that's how we're pretty easy to talk with. And sorry, I've had people call me before, Dina, that just like, look, I can't, I don't really need your services, but I just had a question. Fine. Call me with your question, email me with a question. I'll respond back to you. We're not that kind of organization that just you have to spend money with us first or something. I'm happy to give you a starting direction if that's all you need.
Absolutely. And I do love that you're like that. You are so giving of your value and your time. And so we so appreciate that. It's always great to be in your presence. And I so thank you for being on this podcast, sharing your wisdom with our listeners. HR is a wonderful, wonderful way to grow your business and make sure that you're, reaching those heights that you want to reach because we rising ships or rising tides all raise ships or whatever the saying is, right? One of those. Herd me up together, right? We don't do it alone is the point. So,
That's right.
yeah, and so we need each other. And thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate you. Listeners, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and share this channel. We depend on you to grow this and to get the word out about entrepreneur growth. So, thank you so much for being here today.